Sweden, yes. Sweden. It prays for, pays for, and partakes in its own national suicide with such diligence, esprit, and dedication, there seems little that anyone can do to stop it. Sweden is a willing international toilet. It willfully and gleefully gobbles the bowel movements of much of the overpopulated and dysfunctional world, and smiles glibly at the dislocation, disorientation, and horror that its society is descending into and the total failure as a nation-state that it is careening toward. But the Swedish government does not want to hear it. It's even gone so far as to drop the names of 14,000 people internationally to blacklist for having, in its own words, objectionable opinions, which I'm delighted to say I have made, but more on that later. Sweden is a country of no-go zones where emergency services do not enter unless backed up by at least 2 police patrol cars, and the police are routinely attacked for entering these parcels of foreign territory that dot the Swedish landscape. And in what could be a touch of the surreal, Sweden has become a country where hand grenades are regularly tossed around by criminals, and between 2015 and 2016, the number of grenades used in Swedish cities went from 10 to 27, or a year-on-year increase of 170%. And the police in Sweden state that the trend stands out among comparable countries without an ongoing war. Sweden, however, is committed, and echoing Canada's Prime Minister, the former substitute drama teacher and part-time ski instructor Justin Trudeau, the Swedish government has continually explained to their native population how they have no culture, and that they can only be enriched by those coming to live in their country on state handouts. Of the 163,000 migrants that arrived in 2015, only 500 have found work, with the remainder 162,500 living on state handouts. That says nothing for the hundreds of thousands of others that have arrived pre and post 2015. But again, none of this matters to Sweden. Take, for example, the Syrian migrants alone that have arrived into the country to date, which number 318,000 persons. And this number doesn't include any of the other migrant groups that have arrived in the country to live on handouts. And this is only the Syrians again, but they will cost 19% of the entire national budget of Sweden, or $18.6 billion in 2017. That's just a little over $58,490 per migrant per year. For reference, the average Swedish household disposable income is about $28,859 per year. And how is Sweden paying for all of this? That's right, by borrowing. Sweden is borrowing to add vibrant cultural diversity that bequeaths its citizens no-go zones, increased crime of all kinds, as well as such delightful enrichment, such as grenades being hurled in their cities throughout the country. And by far, the greatest and best known intercultural exchange that never keeps on giving, and that has been brought to Sweden, is the explosion of sexual assault and rape, child rape, gang rape, rape. Sweden is now the rape capital of Europe. Rape and Sweden go together like a horse and carriage, and when migrants rape, they are seldom punished or even deported. Many times, a rape is seen by the courts in Sweden as a cultural misunderstanding.
So tolerant.
Enrichment rape has become such a fixture of the modern fabric of multicultural Sweden that in the tiny city of Östersund, which hovers just around the Arctic Circle, well, this city has had to cancel the dimming of its city streetlights in solidarity with Earth Day. Why, you might ask? Well, because migrants are raping women, and it has made the streets of this tiny little town too dangerous to have the street lights dimmed. Not to worry, however, because the Swedish police are, of course, on the job and valiantly handing out Don't Touch Me bracelets at festivals that have had high instances of sexual assault, as well as the newly imported Arab rape game, Taharoush, that sees cultural enrichers surround their prey in layers of men and take turns violating them. And in coordination with the police, the political class is stepping up its efforts. In fact, the political party, the Swedish Feminist Initiative, with aspirations to enter parliament next year, has a platform that calls for absolute freedom of immigration, and its Ugandan leader, Victoria Kawesa, is against the deportation of foreign murderers and rapists because there's nowhere to deport white ethnic Swedes should they commit a crime. And this brings me to the national Swedish Twitter account, @Sweden. It claims to be a platform that supports the idea of free speech and democracy and invites opinions and debates. However, some 14,000 users have been placed on the account's blacklist, entirely unable to participate in the very benefits it boasts. And wouldn't you know it, I too was placed on that blacklist, probably as some of my videos about the impending failed state that Sweden is heading toward, and their enjoyment and their lust to sacrifice thousands of their children upon the altar of multiculturalism goes against their narrative and push for societal suicide. And I actually do wear this as a badge of honor. Thank you, Sweden. In fact, the only person or group that I do know of that was placed on the blacklist and then was rescinded was the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Until there was a public outcry, that is, of the censorship, and everyone was then unblocked. Sweden at this point no longer should be laughed at, derided, or ridiculed. It needs to be observed as a country that has gone mad and is seeking its own destruction. It is a cautionary warning. And as the country becomes racked in violence, no-go zones, crime, and the rapes of Swedish women and children explode in number, what do Swedish women and feminists concern themselves with? Yes, that's right. Running around the streets of Stockholm pretending they are horses to fight what they see as the patriarchy of historical statues of mounted men. As the country burns around them and their fellow countrywomen are encouraging the importation of a real rape culture, Swedish feminists whinny and gallop through the streets to fight statue patriarchy. Keep an eye on Sweden. It is a blueprint of a society in transition and racing toward the bottom. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. Also follow Black Pigeon on the usual social media and check out the website blackpigeonspeaks.com for more interesting information like this.